for the update. So we've been here a year before, and like so many things have happened, but you are kind of still betting millions on a future where biology is not a limit, but a starting point. Tell us about the enhanced games, which are kicking off this year.
Okay, so my most exciting project this year, so you all need to put it in your calendar. It's going to be on May 24th, live in Las Vegas, but globally televised. It's called Enhanced Games. Think about the Olympics, so we do the core disciplines, running, swimming, and weightlifting. Just that performance-enhancing drugs, colloquially called doping, are not just allowed, but actually actively endorsed. So we want to show with the Enhanced Games what the human body can do with the help of science, where's the limit, or positively said, how much can we excel like with the support of science.
I mean, we are obviously in a time where a lot of ideas around enhancement, our bodies are changing anyway. Like I remember a year ago, nobody knew what a GLP-1 was, and now like everybody's doing it. So, but still, at the moment, there is still criticism for these enhanced games. Like the IOC calls it morally bankrupt, whereas younger athletes are saying it's morally bankrupt the way they are treated in the old system. Can you talk to this a little bit?
I mean, first of all, the great thing with the IOC is that they're so old and stupid that they don't understand social media. So every single time they say something which they think is bad, it's actually amazing for us, because obviously for a global sport event, the one thing you really want is attention. And we have spent $0 on marketing so far, and we just did a survey with thousands of people in the US. And without having the first event, because the first event is going to be, as I said, on May 24th, and without having spent anything on marketing, we have a 61% rate of people at least who have heard about us. So for us, for a sport event, or for any, in general, life event, any form of publicity is good publicity. But also it's like, it's really dumb what they say, because like, the problem is, it's, first of all, by the way, to clarify, because some people think doping is illegal, which is not. So doping is called when the IOC or any other sport league makes a private contract with their athletes and defines what is allowed or not. For example, we had this discussion last year, I'm very against alcohol, so I've never tried alcohol in my whole life. If I would say in my personal apartment, at any dinner I'm hosting or whatever, alcohol is not allowed, let's call it, it's banned, wouldn't make it illegal outside my apartment. So it's very important the IOC wants you to believe doping is illegal, like legally in terms of the government tells you so. It's not, it's a private contract. And by the way, most of the substances which are on the WADA anti-doping list are things you might take. By the way, there's 25% you can buy free sellable in a pharmacy. Like till some years ago, actually coffee was not allowed on the day of any sporting event whatsoever. It's a complete random list. So what we are saying, it's very important, is not everything goes, but it needs to be an FDA-approved medication. So you can't take crystal meth, because crystal meth is illegal from the government side. You cannot take also experimental drugs, because they're not approved. So the only thing, but that's a wide range of medications available, but sort of our rule is like it needs to be an FDA-approved medication. You need to take it with a doctor, and you need to go or undergo very sort of thorough health testing. With this sort of baseline, if you look at Olympics or any other sports, they are a farce, because like the IOC is actually admitting themselves, it's not my number, that 44% of all athletes in the Olympics are secretly doping, which makes the Olympics completely meaningless, because you see something on TV and you're like, okay, is this guy or woman winning now because they're really good, or are they winning because they secretly cheated? And for me, cheating is when not everybody has the same transparent sort of starting position. Again, with us, it's very transparent. People can do whatever is medically available to them, so it makes it extremely fair and extremely transparent. The other point which you alluded to, which I think is actually more important than everybody knows us for, performance-enhancing drugs are allowed and endorsed. But what is equally or even more important is that the IOC and every other, by the way, athletics sport league is treating their athletes like shit. So the average Olympic gold medal winner makes $25,000 a year all in including sponsoring and whatever, which is, I think we all would agree, very little. And for that, they're spending their teens and 20s 100% because they love it. If you talk, there was a great interview with one of our German athletes, Marius Kusch. Yeah, he's like, hey, I had an offer from a hedge fund, and he kind of knows that he kind of ruined his life by not going into finance, but he loves swimming so much. But also he knows in a normal sort of setting or in the old world, yeah, he would be finished with 30, no money saved again because they make $10,000, $20,000. So we are paying the athletes hundreds of thousands of dollars base salary, and then we have very high prize money for breaking a world record whatsoever, because we want to make the athletes the superstars they really should be, but that also means they should be paid properly, like soccer players are, like whatever basketball players are whatsoever. And that actually brought us, even for the ones who are not participating, brought us a lot of sort of sympathy from the athletes community.
But I mean, it's also in a context where this happens of a broader, really big change in the understanding of healthcare, because people start to become more, like, you know, individually try to take care of their health. So until the state would say, oh, now you're allowed maybe in 150 years. So same goes with psychedelics, that most people make that personal decision. And I found it very interesting that there were many athletes in the last years, specifically somebody like Aaron Rodgers, who really had even a TV show on Netflix saying how a psychedelic experience, or many, have kind of helped him with his sports and with his trauma that made, you know, he experienced when he lost or he had an injury. So, and he really openly talks about it, how he became a better team player. He became a better kind of person that could, he could go more into the training. So you're also obviously very engaged in the psychedelic world and industry. So what is your take on the things that happened last 25? Because a lot of things have happened.
I mean, two things remind me of the athletes and psychedelics. Okay. If you go one step back, and what is the bigger picture? Like, does anybody, or have you ever thought about what, when we call something a medicine, or we say, what is a medicine, what is an illness? So when did we actually define that? We don't think about it because that's just like the system how it is. It was actually defined sort of the current sort of setup of our medical system, and also by that the current sort of, or the thinking, how we all instinctively approach medication, whatever, was defined in the 1920s. What happened in the 1920s was that till then in America, there was zero definition, meaning everybody could call themselves a doctor, and this was the time when people were traveling around and selling snake oil and whatever, and said, oh, this cures you from everything. Yeah, everybody could call themselves a doctor. Everybody could say anything about, because they sell water and say this whatever cures cancer, whatever. There was zero regulation, which is obviously bad. So the US government commissioned a so-called, what later called the Flexner Report, because the guy who wrote it, the lead guy, was a guy called Mr. Flexner, in order to sort of invent or structure the medical system. So what this guy Flexner defined was, first of all, that a medication need to be provenly efficacious, which I think check, we want that, and obviously you need to know, does it do any harm, are there any side effects, which is again the basis of the current system. Then doctors need to have a minimum of an education. Yeah, so in order to call yourself a doctor, you need to attend certain universities, have certain education. Also check, great. But then the third one is where it starts to be a little bit tricky, because he called an illness the negative deviation from the norm, and then said, and a medicine is only something which should be given when there is a negative deviation from the norm in order to bring you back to the norm. So there are many sort of illnesses where I think we all know what that means. If you have cancer, it's clearly bad and it's a negative deviation from the norm, because the norm should be you have no cancer. If you have a viral infection or whatever, again, virus shouldn't be in your body, it's a negative deviation from the norm. But for example, back then, being gay was defined as a negative deviation from the norm, hence being gay was defined as an illness, yeah, and I think we all would agree it's not. So what I want to say, that term norm, at least for some issues, is a very slippery slope. If you look, for example, at mental health, which is more subjective, where does depression start? Yeah, I think we can all say, look, if somebody is very in a bad state, but are we all super happy? What is the norm? Whatever. So that is the tricky thing. And unfortunately, though, that prevailed, and sort of in the Western world since then, we're only few medication A, again, which is given when there is a negative deviation from the norm, and only then, meaning we completely also ignored any form of preventative treatment, only when when the skin in den Brunnen gefallen is, only when the problem is there, yeah, then you're allowed to give medication. And this is, I think, what I think should be changed, and what we're also working on changing with many companies, because I think we enter an era where we understand science better. By the way, again, I want to say again, for the 1920s, it was a huge positive thing that they sort of at least define something as a baseline. But now that we understand biology better, now that we understand the human body better, we should actually look more obviously still curing illnesses which we all agree are bad, like cancer or whatever, but also looking more in a libertarian view on the body and say, hey, why should we wait, for example, till somebody becomes depressive? If psychedelics, meaning we can come to that in a second, we've proven in the last year, with clinical data, phase 3 for psilocybin, that psychedelics do cure depression, anxiety, and all of that. But actually, I would tell a lot of people, if you're going through a bad phase in your life, why would you wait till you become depressive? If we know these substances have very little side effects and an enormous upside, why not say, hey, I'm going through a shit phase in my life, I think I feel a little bit at risk becoming depressive, why should I not take a psychedelic session sort of preventatively? The same for other things. But then also again, there are many subjective things. Let's think about sex. Yeah, by the way, who wants to have more sex? I think at least, I don't want to ask you now and raise your hands, but a lot of people would say, hey, I want to have more sex, yeah. Who want to have more sensual sex? There are great drugs in development which sort of increase that thing. Who wants to be more smart, by the way? One thing, we never think about is how unfair is it, if we talk about unfair things in life, that we accept that people are sort of born with a certain IQ. Wouldn't it be better we help people increasing that?
Okay, and do you think it's now time also to, let's say, release psychedelics from a purely medical, like you were just described earlier, kind of norm? This is if you feel this, you have a disease, kind of. So is it time to introduce it now in, let's say, a bigger lifestyle context, of course, in a safe way? Is this now the time also to think about this, that people can take their kind of, like you say, prevention into their own hands and not wait until, again, a government says you hold it another 50 years?
I would say this term lifestyle and medical is not at odds with each other. I think that's exactly the point. So when people always ask me, I would say I'm kind of a conservative libertarian. I think we should give people the freedom, especially when it comes to medication, to use them much more individually, but based on knowledge. So it's not the same if you think about sports enhancements. The one thing we tell people with enhanced games, we have the best medical team, I would really say, in the world for performance-enhancing drugs. So the athletes who sign up with enhanced games, they have the best advisory team, so to say. So within, again, the medical-defined base of the drugs which are medically available, to find the best for them. So I would always say all these things should be done with a doctor, because again, they're also sometimes very individual. Again, if I stay with sports enhancements, it's not the same for everybody. It's if you take, as a man, I can tell you, yes, it's good if you take testosterone, but what's your baseline? How much should you take? Whatever, it's very individual, and you have to do it with a doctor. But that doesn't mean that you only should take it when you have an illness. That's my point. I think we should not distinguish between lifestyle and medical, but we should open up the medical use case and allow doctors, which, by the way, a lot of them are doing, but they're kind of doing it still for example, if you're a man and you want testosterone replacement therapy, then the truth is, by the way, I would tell every man over 35, do it. Every year a little bit. It's one of the most proven facts to slow down aging, to make you feel better. You can have it, because most doctors will start giving it, but they will say, oh, he doesn't sleep well, oh, his sexual appetite has gone down, whatever. The truth is, in the future, they should be allowed just to say he wants to feel even better. Yeah, but that is happening. So I think so, sort of the medical, this is what I said before, the definition of what is a medically treatable issue is opening up, and not only this negative deviation from the norm, but preventative and actually enhancement, whatever you sort of personally want for yourself.
But
and GLP-1s, to say that,
yeah.
the biggest sort of driver of all of that are these so-called GLP-1s. Like, you know that under the brand names Ozempic, Wegovy, whatever, all these weight loss drugs. Because like, the truth is, on paper, they still only approved for clinically, I mean, for diabetes anyway, that's where they're coming from, but they are approved for clinically obese people to lose weight. So I am on GLP-1s because it's great outsourced discipline. Hopefully nobody thinks I'm clinically obese. But yeah, it works. Yeah, it's amazing. So, and actually I think that the number is 80% of Americans who use GLP-1s are not clinically obese, but just want to look even better, want to be thinner, whatever. So this is actually the first global enhancement drugs for everybody.
And that it's in women's fashions magazines now that you
exactly.
can in a year. Like
but still, it has to be done with a doctor because you have to look at it. Some people have side effects; they shouldn't then take it. So it's all about, I would say, it's all about knowledge. Then monitoring is super important. Yeah, hence doing it with a professional together. So, but my push is let's open up the definition for what is medicine and what should it be used for.
But let's quickly talk about, like, what does it mean if athletes come out talking about psychedelics? I mean, Aaron Rodgers is just one, like Mike Tyson is talking about it. Daniel Castillo, an ice hockey player who experienced severe concussion and then depression. So it seems like more athletes are also coming out with their stories. Is this super helpful right now?
Meaning anybody, I think, who's coming out and telling positive patient stories is always great. I think athletes, there are several reasons. The one is, by the way, sadly, athletes, celebrities, this whole group of jobs is actually, they are at the highest risk of developing a mental health issue because of the nature of their job. It's sort of one very close friend and supporter of mine who is also a shareholder in our psychedelic business at High is a guy called Kevin Love. I can mention him because he's very open about it. He's a very famous basketball player. And he had to come out and speak about his mental health problem because he had really a breakdown at a live sort of basketball game, so he couldn't hide it anymore. And then he actually found out that many more of his players, which he never talked about because it's a very like, sort of especially male sports is still very you don't talk about things like any form of issues or whatever. Yeah, that many other players than Giannis Antetokounmpo came out and said, hey, I have the same issues. Yeah, because the pressure is super high, meaning they earn hundreds of millions, but that also means they know they need to perform. Like, yeah, so that is one thing. Then another thing is a lot when athletes actually retire, when from one day to the other they don't have that sort of external validation anymore. Yeah, that's another problem. There is a great documentary we worked together with, The Weight of Gold, where several Olympic gold medal winners came out and said then after that, when they sort of privatized, they had a lot of mental health issues and so on. And then actually we even have people in the enhanced games who use, again, we limit it to already approved, and most psychedelics are not approved yet. I hope psilocybin, our lead drug, will be approved the FDA already said it will be approved, so it's a done deal. It's just like there is a lot of sort of admin work to be done, but should be end of the year. But for example, ketamine, which is kind of not a real psychedelic, but psychedelic light and psychedelic-like, is already available in the US and in Europe for treatment actually of depression. But a lot of our athletes are using ketamine therapy to focus themselves more. So not only actually, again, coming to the point of enhancements, so psychedelics, like many other medications, can not only be used to treat a problem once it's there, but also can be used for a very positive sort of thing, in this case, when they want to focus on the next big thing, whatever. So yes, so psychedelics definitely is one of actually my biggest beliefs is like, they're not only going to be used to treat mental health issues once they're there. I think psychedelics, what I said before, because of their also benign side effect profile, will be, I think, bigger than, for example, GLP-1s. because once approved, people will also use it for, again, ideally preventative treatments if they are at risk developing a mental health issue. But actually, even if you're not at risk, if you have a great life, my personal experience with psychedelics is it's even adding then. And I think happiness is the one thing, if you use the positive form and not the absence of it, depression, happiness is the one thing where you can't have enough of it. If I would ask you, hey, even if you're happy, want to be a little bit more happy, I think 100% of the people would say, why not? Because that's the one thing, actually it's my belief that this is the one thing why we're here in life. We want to be happy and make other people happy. So I think psychedelics can be really the one treatment for everybody.
Okay, we have 1 minute more. Let's give us the 3 trends for the next year in terms of psychedelics, longevity, and maybe where also there's a context with AI happening.
Okay, the last is a little bit, I hurry up, but psychedelics are coming. Like as I said, look, if you follow me on social media, whatever, you follow my companies, like the data we produced is incredibly good. It's maybe the best data sets ever in neuroscience. The FDA said they love it. Like again, if you look at the data, there's nothing to not love. Yeah, so psychedelics are coming, and let's say latest in 2027 we'll be fully there in sort of everyday medication in the US. Europe is lagging behind. The second, I said it before, but I really believe not just that enhanced games will be a super fun event, but I think we can use enhanced games, and that's one of my goals, and sort of use it as a consumer-facing, and people love sports, and yeah, I hope it's going to be one of the biggest events in sports this year, but use that to really change the view people have on their own body, on performance-enhancing medications, and actually that we all, again, should be free to decide who do we want to be, how do we want to look, how do we want to feel, whatever, and work with doctors. And then maybe the sort of positive, negative, I know there is a lot of talks about AI. If I look at AI, I'm actually very optimistic about an AI and robotics world, or post-AGI world, if you want to say it short, what it can be. So the one thing I'm way more worried about than the outcome is actually the transition. So unfortunately, if you look in history, humans, literally every single time when there was a sort of new or big technological process, we really, really fucked it up. There is not a single time when there was a disruptive leap and we did it well. And the worst was, and it's very interesting because you can see it if you go, because you can still read the newspapers, if you go in the time 1870 to 1910, which was the last big, huge innovation cycle. And what was the consequence was actually 2 world wars. So, and the reason is because I think rapid change, even if it's ultimately good, is producing fear, and fear brings out the worst in human beings. And I think for the first time, literally in human history, we have one drug or group of drugs which can counter fear, which is psychedelics. So I think actually psychedelics can be sort of the support we need to manage this rapid change. We are already in it. So
it's like the Oscars, like we're invited to stop.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys for being here.